AI-Driven Development with Jimmy Bogard.
The AI DevOps podcast is a show for those shipping software using AI, .NET, Azure, and DevOps. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods and sharing success stories. Sponsoring the podcast is ClearMeasure, a software architecture and engineering firm that implements AI to empower software teams to establish quality, achieve stability, and increase speed. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that AI and Azure and the .NET ecosystem has to offer. I have a 5-time return guest on the show, Jimmy Bogard, and he really is a true heavyweight in the .NET open source world and someone whose work has kind of quietly but profoundly shaped the way that a lot of developers build software. He's a creator and maintainer of the two very popular libraries, AutoMapper and MediatR, and if you've ever tried to simplify object mapping or decouple application logic, chances are you've probably used his libraries. He is based in Austin, Texas, and he's an independent software consultant and a 15-year plus recipient of the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Award. AutoMapper specifically has been around for 17 plus years. He's got hundreds of millions of downloads, and we're gonna talk about that and more. So, Jimmy, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Doing good. Thanks for having me back on, I guess.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah.
Again. I love it. And we'll include a link to the past episodes in the show notes for the listeners who are just getting to know you for the first time. So for the listeners who haven't heard you speak or getting to know you for the first time, if you could kind of go back in your memory and think, what was it and what does it continue to be that is interesting about making computers do interesting things that kind of keeps you engaged and passionate about this field all these years?
Yeah. I think I probably have what a lot of folks in this industry have, which is that I enjoy that dopamine rush of, ask the computer to do something and then it does it. And that's like, oh, I got something to do something that I asked it to do. So I don't know if that part will ever get old. It's just, it's always been something that I've always enjoyed with programming. So I don't see that really ever going away. It's still, I still have that same rush I always had.
Yeah. It is fun. Well, I want to ask you about, just catching me up on how your brain is processing AI-driven development over the last year, since the tools have just really, we're in a whole different world than we were a year ago. But before that, I want you to give us a quick update on MediatR and AutoMapper. I know you're operating the commercial product company now instead of just open source maintainer. And just kind of give us an update on that now that we're over a year.
Yeah, we just passed a year. I officially launched commercially like July 1st or 2nd of last year. So yeah, we've now gone over 12 months of business. And so far, it's been great. It's been really rewarding. I've gotten to do things I've not ever had to do before or ever been exposed to. Like I've never run a software company before. So it's a lot of new experiences just knowing how to do that kind of business. I've been in consulting forever. I mean, gosh, like 17, 18 years, something like that now. Mm-hmm. And very familiar with that business, but not at all with like licensing software, or the whole business aspect of that. So just that has been really fun and interesting of doing something new and different than all the consulting stuff I was exclusively doing before.
Yeah. Cool. So I don't know if you know how many people out there are using the last open source version versus have kind of upgraded to the new commercial version. Do you have any data on that, or is that like, no, you can't even tell because of how NuGet?
You can kind of, I mean, so you do get like raw numbers out of NuGet, like just X number of downloads, and then you get some information on the versions, but it's still a bit limited, and it's time windowed, so you can't see, forever history. So I still see plenty of downloads of the older versions, and I kind of expect that to continue. But in terms of understanding like how many folks have decided to upgrade, whether they pay or not, That's just like Microsoft definitely knows. I'm sure they could. Well, I'm sure they've got numbers to figure that out, but that's not something that, of course, they share with anybody else.
Yeah.
So they would probably know, but like I just see one giant number on NuGet, and then I see what people have actually signed up. So that's been another really fun thing of this whole experience is I get to actually see who is using the stuff I've made over the years. Like with consulting, I knew exactly the customer that paid for it. I know they use it. But with open source, you only really just get that sort of download count, but you don't really know who's actually using it. So that's been another really rewarding part of this is just seeing like all these people that I had no idea. I knew people used it, but who? No idea. It's just really cool to see like with consulting, you have a direct connection to the missions that you're, furthering and advancing. But with like just libraries that people download, you don't know.
Yeah.
So getting that connection has been also super rewarding as well.
Yeah.
So how many? No idea.
Sure. Well, so I enjoy that you're kind of keeping the code out in the open, even though the license has changed. It's still an open Git repository where the code can be browsed and whatnot. And so I threw Claude at the repos just to see that the beginning of 26, the number of commits, you had like a spike. And so what was curious for me was, we're into this AI age now where we can kind of go, it seems like we can go at the speed that we can think, pending token budgets and all that. And of course, when AI outpaces my capacity to think about the structure of the software, that's where you get into AI slop territory, and it's like, throw that branch away. But so I want to kind of ask, with that transition, how has that changed your attitude and pace just with software development, and what's different from a year ago in your world?
Yeah. So one of the things I've found is that all those skills that we worked on so much in consulting of being able to describe the software that we want, we'd always make, good Jira tickets or whatever it was. We try to be fairly descriptive and do quite a bit of research into those to like make sure we're building the right software. We also want to make sure we're building the software right, which is another thing, but we want to make sure that we're building the software that the end user expects. Like this is what they want. And to do so, we had found that, going through user stories and really collaborating on those first of describing what we think we wanted was valuable time because it had us, brought those conversations as well. So when I am building those instructions for an agent, it's not that different than what I was doing before in terms of building out user stories that describe what we want to do. Sometimes we put in hints for implementation details. Those would be for the developers, right? We have technical notes, whatever. Like that hasn't changed. And neither has changed of however good your user story description is then how good the software comes out on the other side. That also has not changed. So if I give bad requirements to a junior developer, I can't really expect great results on the other side. Like it's just garbage in, garbage out. So really, that has not changed at all with agentic based development. It's like you give it garbage, it'll come out garbage on the other side. Minus, they are getting, what I've seen, especially the last 6 months, better about like remembering conversations and being able to remember things in the first place, and then offering design feedback as well. So it does feel much more like having a conversation with a developer these days versus just pure, garbage in, garbage out. But still, all that, like, it doesn't remove the need to think about what I want to have built and how it should be designed. Has still not removed that. It's just kind of shortened the time to get that immediate feedback.
Yeah.
Of is this going to work or not? Yeah.
So to get kind of really tactical, let's say over the last 4 or 5 months, how many lines of code do you find yourself hand typing or even, resharpening, tabbing versus just monitoring as a prompt produces it?
Ooh, I gotta say it's like 95% agent based. Because still the software I'm mainly, I think you can look at this in any kind of enterprise software application. 95% of it is not that interesting. It's like fairly straightforward stuff, I find myself working on trying to give the agents more context, better context, give it more sources for information, more what is it called, the MCP servers, although those are limited value, but be like, oh yeah, someone has an MCP server for this tool I use. Instead of you guessing based on the API, just plug that thing in, so it just works better. I find my time better spent on things like that, and then also thinking about what I want to build and designing it versus like the hands-on keyboard. For that 5% where it is complicated, or at least I don't know which direction I want to go, and I just still want to play around with different options, then that's when I'll kind of go down for the exploratory, just kind of like exploratory refactoring sort of sessions. But then otherwise, my time's just better spent telling this thing to work in the background and then coming back and reviewing the results.
Yeah. Well, what does your developer workstation look like these days? Your tool stack that you find yourself gravitating to?
Well, I'm still Mac OS. I know I've got friends that have not just moved off of that have gotten really into agentic development. They're looking at ways of running the agents locally, running the LLMs locally. So they're like looking at getting Mac Pros, or I don't know, that I wait for them to figure it out. Like, I'm not an early adopter like that. Like, if it requires buying hardware, like, you figure it out first, and then I'll come back later. But I still do enough. I still consult, so I still need like a laptop. So I don't see myself going to like having local GPUs or whatever for a while until it just becomes, if it ever becomes like painfully obvious that that's a better way to work, then I'll move over. But otherwise, so locally it's, I do runs an agent server locally just for local LLMs. And then otherwise I'm mainly in IDEs. So I still have not like just gone completely over to VS Code. I still find JetBrains Writer to be, it seems to be better in terms of just the developer experience than just pure VS Code. Then past that, I still haven't nailed it down. So I'm mainly on still Claude-based subscriptions, so Codex and that sort of stuff. I do have ChatGPT like still as a thing, but I'm mainly moved over to Claude for all the agentic work I do. But again, that's one of those like we used to make fun of like new JavaScript framework coming out every 3 months or every 3 weeks, or every 3 days, whatever. Noun.js. I feel the same way about some AI models. I'm like, are you using the new Fable or this or that? I'm like, I don't know. If it shows up and it says used, I'm like, okay, I'll use it.
Well, is it just me?
Whatever.
Does Anthropic seem to be dominating the LLM choices at the moment? Like you mentioned Claude, so you're using the Anthropic models, and it's just Do I want Fable, Opus, Sonnet, or Haiku for what I'm doing right now? Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I don't really know the difference other than the cost they give me. I just haven't. You're just one of those things, like kind of waiting for the dust to settle about who's going to quote win this before I invest a ton of time like trying out these different things. I'm like, I just have stuff I need to build. I don't, I don't need to go on a 10-day. Let's compare all the options, because it's just going to change anyway. The new model comes out, it gets improved, and then whatever decision you made before may be gone already.
Right. Okay, so you're on JetBrains Writer, and you're using the Claude stack mostly. Are you looking for best of breed tools regardless of price, or are you drawn to Claude because they're subsidizing more than any of the other vendors at the moment?
They're definitely subsidizing more than the other vendors, and I think as well, I'm on one of the plans that they're not letting people sign up anymore on. So I'm like, I gotta figure that out as well. But yeah, I tried a lot of different coding ones. Like I tried them, Microsoft's one, our GitHub Copilots, and I still found that the Anthropic ones still tended to produce the best results. I even looked at, because I'll also have, when you're a solo developer, I still want to have something else review my code. So I used to use Copilot to review everything, but I found there was a lot, the quality just wasn't as good. But these days now I use Codex as well. So Codex will review, and Anthropic will review pull request, and then I always do the last spot check. This is really no different than I was doing as a tech lead, right? You need a peer review, and then you want someone else to give that sort of outside eyes whatever. So I'm still doing that. It just so happens the peer review is like also LLM.
Yeah.
But those results have gotten better and better and better crazily. Like where they're, my local agent is arguing with Codex pull request review back and forth, and they'll come back and, hey, you need to make a decision. Like, okay, what are you arguing about?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, well, you need to go this direction then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you about that, because you mentioned 90 and 95% code AI generated, and quite a few of my other guests are kind of in that realm as well. Seems like a massive industry shift, and so with that, you've got code that you didn't write, a peer on the project team didn't write, so you've got it generated by a computer, and you've got to figure out, is this slop or is this good? Do I like it? What is my definition of good? And so how have you found yourself wrestling with that process question? And what have you figured out? And what do you still think is in the camp of, as an industry, we're still trying to figure out that piece?
So I don't think any of the normal sort of idioms or adages that we had kind of cut our teeth on, I don't think any of those have really changed. So I'm still looking at, I still want to minimize the amount of code I have to write to get something done for a customer. Any extra line of code is something that could cause bugs, could be something that then we have to support in the future. So I don't see that as changing. Yes, like the agents can do it they could do it more quickly, or at least more asynchronously. I found it's not necessarily quicker, but it's certainly quicker for me because I can do other things while that thing's turning in the background. So that sort of stuff hasn't changed. I still see that I need the same quality gates as I had before. So I still have unit tests. I still have those integration tests as well. Like that still hasn't changed. And the work I used to do as a tech lead, which was more the introspective, after you get like, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks of a project under your belt, there's a point in time where you do this, like sort of take a step back, look to see what patterns are emerging or what complexities have arisen. That's something that I will look at or pay very close attention to with what the pull requests are coming up of, like, oh, it's changed this thing 6 times, so maybe this needs to be encapsulated in a concept. Those are things that the junior developers wouldn't necessarily come up on their own, nor do the LLMs come up on their own. So my activities as a tech lead architect are still the same as they were before. Like, those are all still needed. It just so happens that I don't have to have myself doing all that work every single time.
Yeah.
But like difficult to maintain code is still difficult to maintain for an LLM. Like, it will still have a difficult time reasoning about a code base if the code base is complicated. So you still behooves yourselves to keep things simple, if nothing else, to make the job of AI and ourselves easier when trying to maintain this code base.
Yeah. So I find myself looking at the organizations or people that try to study and do surveys and gather some type of data, and the Get Clear organization has put up some numbers they call the maintainability gap. And it's 2026, so it's just in the last 6 months, and they kind of reported that refactoring lines of code change is down 70% in this current 6 months, and duplication is up 81% industry wide. And so you mentioned 6 weeks, look, refactor and see what patterns and whatnot. And so, one, does that surprise you? What do you think about that? And how do you approach just the making sure that your code bases in your projects aren't accidentally just duplicating all over the place?
Well, that's a tricky one. So I would also want to pair those activities against some quality metrics. So is cyclomatic complexity going up? Is coupling going up? If those stayed low, but the other numbers went up, then I would say, well, it's not as important. Like, to me, the coupling, the maintainability, those are the most important metrics. The other ones those help indicate, those are indicators, but I'm still looking at, what is the quality of the code base over time. It's not something, honestly, I measure a lot in the code bases. It's usually like a one-off. Okay, we we have a code base that is hard to change, and you run independ, and you're like, well, there's your problem. You got this one method that is super hard, super complex, and it's the most important thing going on in your system. So that's why it's hard to maintain. Those are still the more important numbers to me than just pure the activities, because you could say, now that you don't have another human reviewing every single line of code, they're less likely to just introduce refactorings for their opinion versus if they actually improved the bottom line. It's like, I don't know, I'm sure you've been in client meetings as well, where if you ask the group their opinion, everyone feels obligated to tell you their opinion, whether it's actually valuable or not. So I definitely do see that at times with peer-based code reviews, is that someone feels like they need to say something, or it's not their personal preference, when that doesn't really matter in the long run. So if it's down with those kinds of refactorings, then to me that's good. If it's just refactoring because it's your preference and it's not like objectively improving the code base, that could be seen as a good thing and adding value. Otherwise, I'd say, give it another year and come back to see those quality numbers to see, how have those changed over time. Has velocity increased or decreased over time due to bad quality code?
Yeah. So it's not really an argument. It's just two different ways to look at it. I tend to look at a code base and tend to favor splitting out projects and assemblies by major libraries and major layers in a code base. And I think that you tend to favor like vertical slice in a lot of cases. And so I come to the thought of a skyscraper. If a skyscraper is a software system, how a particular floor is configured with an open floor plan versus individual offices, that's one thing. But deciding how many elevator shafts and where they are and the fire escapes and where we're going to run the fire suppression sprinkler pipes up and down, like if a floor messes that up, well, now the architecture of the building is compromised versus one floor happened to be, maybe completely different configured than another floor. And I think that could apply to software. And if naming things and the abstractions and where certain code is was so much for us to understand it and get a picture in our head, but then the question is, okay, what's the structural part of the architecture? And have you wrestled with that? And what do you think on that?
So I still think that software these days is easier to change than it ever was before. So I still like this idea of optimizing for change versus like necessarily solidifying a specific way of doing something. So that's one of the reasons I like the slice-based architecture, is it allows individual features to deviate from the others if the needs arise, the complexity needs arise. But I also recognize we need to be able to give large teams instructions on how to build software in a consistent manner. So one of the things I found that these tools, these LLM-based tools allow you to do is we can put those kinds of opinions down into our agents files so that the entire team can be consistent. So in terms of like where my headspace is more like, I don't care about it. I sure do hope that these tools help make it easier to enforce an architecture. Because one of the things I absolutely hate is, I know you've seen this as well a lot, you come on a new project, the code base is 10 years old, and you can tell there's been 4 different tech leads because each one has come in and then offered their own, brilliant ideas and opinions on the code base, and now you've got a fractured code base with not a consistent way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I'm always of the opinion, we can get into philosophical arguments all day long. The reality is, like any approach that is out there, as long as you're consistent, is probably going to produce a good result. Like it's the inconsistency in architecture I see that kind of can kill these long-term projects, because every time a new developer comes on board, they're like, which is the quote right way of doing things? And at some point you just kind of give up. You're like, well, now there's 6 different ways of doing things. How about another one? What's one more new way of doing things? So I'm really hoping these tools can really help enforce that consistency so that the team is less worried about these arguments and just focus on like, who cares? This is what we decided. Unless there's some glaring problem in our velocity,
Yeah.
let's just be consistent. That's more important to me.
Well, let's dive into architecture then. You said to enforce the architecture. So we've kind of had manual and non-standardized ways, and before 2020 and before the everybody's remote for everything kind of era, there was the concept of people stood around a whiteboard and drew some pictures and drew some lines and boxes or got on Visio or some other drawing tool. It's like, okay, we have a drawing where we all agree this is the desired shape. And okay, so how do we how do we record and communicate and enforce architecture in the era of AI driven development?
I think at the application level, that is certainly more feasible than it has been in the past. Enforcement's always still tricky though, because there's still not been a project I've been on where we've had like a ironclad expectation of what the architecture should be. And then like a month later, a developer's like, well, what about this case? And I'm like, dang it. There's always that edge case. Like with any of these kinds of approaches, I still want a safety valve of like, I need to be able to get an escape hatch and get off that as long as there's, a good quote, good reason to do so. And as long as that's the expectation, we're all good. Otherwise, I still like this idea of using these LLM-based tools to help enforce it at the creation time. It's enforcing it later that becomes a lot trickier, I think. I mean, we've tried that with things like dependency rules, not into like code quality, code QL rules, or independent rules, and those can work. But then there's always that, okay, if it's enforced, but there's there's some specific use case where that doesn't fit, we need to have an exclusion for the rule. Then I want to make sure that it's not too difficult for us in those tools to be able to say, okay, for this specific use case, we want to go against the policy because of blah, 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 blah. It's when I find that those tools become too heavy-handed, then they become abandoned altogether, as opposed to like, well, I need to be able to bend the rules when it's required and just recognize these are, 99% guidelines over here, but then I need to have an escape hatch over there.
Well, when it comes to just even communicating, getting on the same page with other people on the project team, what is your current method for communicating the architecture? Do you draw diagrams? Do you generate them? Do you just list it out in bullets? What do you find yourself gravitating?
Oh yeah, any kind of online collaboration tool, whether it's something like Draw.io or Miro, I don't know how to pronounce it, but those kind of like all just completely online SaaS-based collaboration tools where people can collaborate in real time on those things. I still spend most of my time in those, trying out different designs, whatever. Sometimes I may go to some other tool that then like paste it into this thing, but it really is those online collaboration tools. And then what I like to do as well is I still like to have a conversation with folks. So that'll be the diagrams are more of a anchor point for a conversation. And then we get on a Zoom, Teams, whatever people are using at the company, and then have a discussion about, okay, let's at least have a straw man argument that we're beating up here that we can all talk to. So yeah, I still do that. I'm not gone full. I mean, I know folks that have tried to do like end-to-end AI sort of development, but it becomes a game of telephone where if you try to have a meeting with the customer, then they transcript the thing, and then you try to put the transcript to create requirements documents, and use something to then create tickets. Like every single transition is going to be lossy, and there's going to be translation errors. So I still prefer to have like a summary, and then I can then guide the creation of the next step, whatever that next step might be. But I still see people are involved in that process, but just not having these like really big, expensive meetings or collaboration sessions, days of collaboration sessions. Those are, to me, as necessary as they were before, because we can get these tools to kind of gather a lot of the information, and then we're just really like we're talking about the solution phase versus like just doing discovery together.
Yeah. Well, going back in time, there's been some transitions that have really changed how we build, test, package, deploy, and then operate and support software, from the smartphone where computers in your pocket to everything's on the cloud versus in data centers, and now and I'm not just cloud, but with just snap your fingers and you got a Kubernetes cluster or you got a PaaS service, and you just here run my code. And so purely elastic infrastructure, and then the open telemetry standard. So what things, in your opinion, either already have changed or need to change about the whole DevOps and infrastructure layer to get the most advantage or fit with AI-driven development?
I mean, me personally, I still would love to just point a subscription at something and it can tell me like where I'm wasting my money. I still feel like I have to pay someone to tell me like where's all this, I see some bill at the end of the month, like where's all this going actually? And how can I can only imagine what large enterprises have to do with that. So I don't know. I still haven't found the tools have been super great about getting the dollar amount for solutions as part of me designing a system of like I'll have customers like, oh, we want to do this versus this for the it could be I want to do app services versus container instances versus Kubernetes, and just trying to ignore the operation side of it, the needing people to know how to do all these things. So just I would love to be able to quickly get through designs and like, okay, what's the actual monthly spend going to be on this this thing we've dreamt up ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen that quite there yet. It's still a lot of work for me to go like, okay, let's go figure out what the operational costs are going to be for whatever we just dreamed up here.
Right.
Oh, too much? Okay, back to the drawing board. Let's try again.
Right. Well, okay. I think you can. We've maybe stumbled upon a technique that worked in Azure. One particular, it was a move to Azure, and we kind of sketched out all the different things that had to deploy. And so it's probably 6 different prompts. And and one of them was, all right, do this in the same frameworks that they're using. Everything was .NET 8, and then one Angular website, and then some other things like 8 or 10 different things that had to be deployed. And so give me a Git repository with these things, and give me a skeleton of a system with these technologies and these number of things. Boop, done. And then create the pipeline, soup to nuts. And then here's a brand new Azure subscription with a token, so it couldn't trash anything real. And so full access to a brand new sandbox Azure subscription. And I want to use region A, region B. Here's the features I want within the region of fault tolerance. I want hot site auto region failover, West Coast, East Coast. And then I want to, if this fails is one, if this fails is one, and I want to test 3 different deployment scenarios. One is no more than a 60-second maintenance window. Second is manual deploy, like swaps. And then third is 0 downtime and the different configurations to support. And just let it run. And I think in a few tweaks, and within a 2-hour span of time, there was a complete Azure multi-failover scenario, all the environments, all the services layered, subnet, firewall, like everything that it was necessary. It's just go create what's necessary, and then, throw some traffic at that nothing of a website, then do a deployment, make sure there was 0 downtime, 0 dropped requests. It was splendid. And so I think that, prototyping at the infrastructure level is here.
So that's something that I haven't had to do in about 1.5 years. So that would make sense that it's changed a bit since then, because it's just something, usually we do it once on a project for a customer, and then I have to think about it for another 9 months.
Working.
Nobody touches. We've got it working there. But yeah, I still see It's now much easier to get those kinds of things up and going now that, it would be before like, oh, great, this XYZ has an API. Great, but do they have an SDK? Oh, they don't have an SDK. Well, then I'm hosed. Versus like, actually now the LM can build the SDK from that. So you don't need to have that sort of thing. So I was like, well, as long as people have APIs for stuff, it's that same thing again. Like if you have an API for it, then it can be automated. And now it's even easier to automate those kinds of things. Now we've got an LLM like just generating that automation for us. Like I still don't fully understand PowerShell, but I don't think I really need to anymore. I think it can just it can generate the PowerShell I need, and then I'm like, okay, it works. I don't need to go back and figure out what the heck it's doing.
So that's a big idea. Okay, you just said, I'm comfortable not intimately knowing PowerShell. I know
Yeah.
I know it at a good enough level where I know kind of generally what's happening under the covers and that it's there. So now as we kind of get to the end, you know, you had a very successful career already, and I would say you're the top of your game. And so for the young software engineers, whether some people are like, well, I'm getting to shoot, everything changed from when I decided to start a university program or whatnot. And now the big companies have laid off a bunch of people saying, quote, quote, that they replaced them with AI. And then I don't know what to believe. And so should I continue to pursue? Am I going to have a career? And now you're saying, well, I don't need to know it. So what do they not need to know? Some of the things that you and I spent a lot of time getting good at, over the last couple of
Mhm.
decades. So if you're coaching a really young person, what do they not need to know that we kind of got really good at?
Oh gosh, I mean, they may not need to know all the keyboard shortcuts of the IDEs. I don't know if that's like strictly necessary anymore. But I don't know. I still see that all the skills I worked on to get to my point in my career now are still serving me going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's um, even just all the sort of basic programming stuff. I still need to understand what these things are generating if I don't necessarily have to type it all myself. Because if ultimately something goes wrong with the application I'm building for a customer, I can't blame the AI.
Mm-hmm.
The customer's not going to accept that. Like, no, you're responsible for the software. So I still feel like that's all necessary to understand all these different things. I don't feel anymore though that I need to become the experts at everything to have to be successful. So like at one point I was designing websites and I felt like I had to be the expert at CSS in order to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But these days, like, I can get there's plenty of good enough solutions out there that you don't need to try to become the expert. There's enough for me to understand, you know, to know how to steer the AI in the right direction, but I don't feel like I have to be that, that expert on every single solution. It's just to know enough to know when it's on the wrong track. We can't just cede all control to these because they just won't know when they're going in the wrong direction. I've just seen that over and over again. They're very confident, and their answers are like, and that just may be hallucinating. So it's up to us to know enough to know when it's on the wrong track or not.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like the definition of good has to come from outside the context window because there's no
Yeah.
awareness of what good is.
No, exactly.
Okay. Well, good. Well, good. Yeah, I don't think that I don't think we've seen the end of the change. Like we look on the past year and like a lot's changed, and I'm thinking, no, I think it's just started to change, and we'll find out.
Yeah. It could be that there's just going to be a wider gulf between, because what I keep seeing again and again is that senior developers that understand the technology underneath the covers can go faster
Mm-hmm.
with these tools, but I haven't seen the same thing for junior folks that they don't know when it's on the wrong direction, and so they'll submit pull requests that are completely the wrong thing. So I'm like, well, that just wasted time. That didn't make things go faster at all. So I still feel like um, it could be the case where you'll see a gulf in skills that for folks that don't have the context aren't actually going any faster, but the folks that do have that context can go much faster. So that's kind of what I've just personally seen so far. In terms of how that translates for folks new to the industry, that I don't know. We'll see, like, what happens when the subsidies run out. Are these companies going to be around? I'm guessing they will be. What the cost is going to be, who knows? But for me, I'm just going to ride this while it's still cheap and build cool software until we just see what happens on the other side. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a time where we were paying real money for every text message and every call to a different city with long distance fees. So the question is, how long before this becomes a utility instead of pay per use?
We also saw, I don't know, we've been in the industry long enough. We've seen other tools, not nearly as powerful as LLMs, come into the industry. For me, the first thing was rapid application development. I was was this going to kill developer jobs? Well, no. Was SharePoint going to kill jobs? No, just makes more of it. The pie got bigger. That's it.
And now more people can make software. And if they make software where they're the user, user of one, great, fantastic. And then
were they going to do? Yeah, exactly. So those folks before may have just been stuck with some tool that did exactly what the tool vendor expected it to. So I know. To me, it's making the pie bigger. But in terms of folks new to the industry, I don't think you're doing yourself any favors by just strictly relying on the tool, because there is an expectation that you're responsible for the code that comes out of it. We can't just point the finger at a Claude and say, it hallucinated again. So customer doesn't care. End user doesn't care.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jimmy, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast. This is a great update. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. And until next time, dear listener, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the AI DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and everywhere else. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.